Welcome to the Honey Be My Teacher podcast. Ms. Patty Haynes is here to share her love of bees.
I just want us to all learn to love the bees.
She'll take us on an adventure in beekeeping.
There's little bits and pieces of good wisdom in there.
And lessons we can learn from these amazing creatures. Thanks for buzzing by. Here's your host, Patty Haynes. Well, it's not Patty yet. Patty, hello.
Hi, Jay.
You've got feedback. You've got mail.
Yes.
What an amazing first episode, the introduction episode. This is officially EP-001. Let's get right into it.
Sounds good.
You've got someone had an exception to something you said in the last episode.
They did.
So, Mr. J. Smith says, Patty, I love what you're doing here. I have a couple exceptions to your discussion. You mentioned cotton-required bees for pollination. While bees certainly enjoy foraging in cotton, the bees gain far more from the relationship than cotton. Cotton breeders tried and gave up on hybrid breeding of cotton many years ago, simply due to cotton's ability for self-pollination. Honeybees, boy, this is quite the feedback, Patty. Honeybees, given a choice of cotton pollen or some other source, choose the alternative pollen. That said, cotton and honeybees produce a wonderful, tasty, mild honey that makes a beautiful creamed honey. Your interviewer asked if bees were considered livestock, and your reply was no. The USDA very much so consider honeybees livestock for federal farm programs and regulation. This may seem like picking nits, but there is too much misinformation on the internet, and whenever possible, it should be corrected. Again, I love your enthusiasm and hope to see your broad success with the podcast. Jay Smith, beekeeper, cotton farmer, crop physiologist.
And I think, Jay, that was great input. And I do get my information from as many detailed sources as possible. But again, there isn't always accurate information out there. So, Jay, thank you. I appreciate all that you've contributed to making it accurate. We want this to be an honest podcast that's also authentic. So, if you ever see anything else that you see that I might be off a little, I'm welcome to your feedback. So I am glad you talked to me.
Nice.
Yes.
Thank you, Jay.
Yeah.
And Patty, I'll say this. I've gone months and maybe even years with my podcast with no feedback, no participation. People just enjoy it and put it aside. How wonderful is that you've got someone chiming in off your very first introduction episode?
It's an honor. All
right. Well, let's get to it. If I'm not mistaken, you've got a lot on your plate. This is the beginnings of the podcast. This is EP-001. Why don't you take it away and tell everybody the whys and the hows of what you're doing here with the Honey Be My Teacher podcast.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Again, you know me. I'm Patty Haynes, and I own honeybees. I have fallen in love with these wonderful little organisms, and we make our home at Riverside Acres in Rochester, Washington. We live on a 57-acre piece right on the Chehalis River. We share with horses, private and boarded. We also have chickens and sheep and dogs, cats. The entire space is filled with wonderful animals. So I've had a chance to enjoy farming in a broad spectrum, but I've found out I really love beekeeping. It's my favorite. So, and I want to talk about it today, and I think we need to understand it together. So I do love beekeeping, and it's been around since Neolithic times. It hasn't changed much these days other than our protective clothing. We're not naked anymore, and high-tech equipment. But this is completely useless if we no longer have our honeybees. We do need to improve these methods along with our overall assumptions and conclusions. But our attitudes toward the honeybee, I think, is the biggest thing that needs to change right now. They're not our enemy. I think we've developed an aversion and a fear to bees. I know the scare of the Africanized honeybee for years had a lot of people wary, but that's truly not the case anymore. So I think we need to re-embrace the honeybee and understand them better. If they die, we may not survive ourselves. And I want to live. And I'm sure, Jay, you want to live too.
Yes.
So I just, a question, were you?
Well, let me time you out for 1 second.
Yes.
African African killer bees. I think it was the 90s.
Yes.
That was a very scary thing. It was these African killer bees that were going to come in and they could swarm and they would kill people. The problem with it was they were also going to decimate the honeybee population. So the first question is, what happened to that? Because I really haven't heard much about it since the 90s. And then two, some of this podcast may be for some experts. I am a layman myself. Maybe you might want to maybe quickly explain why the honeybee is so important.
Okay.
It pollinates flowers. Okay, big deal.
It also pollinates almonds, coffee. There's just a plethora of foods out there. I will tell you on a factual level that the pollinators that we have, they are the lifeblood of the food chain, accounting for 70% of our crops that feed 90% of the planet.
Okay, so 70% of the crops grown are directly... I guess you have to explain. The bee literally pollinates and grows the. Help me understand.
Sure.
Where's the honeybee in this process?
So the honeybee is. Everybody just assumes they're just this honeybee in a hive that magically makes honey, and what they do is they forage. They are worker bees. They come out and they fly around in the air in big circles, and they have this little GPS system, and they each go a different direction, and they go find plants or flowers that give off pollen.
Okay.
A honeybee will only use one type of pollen at a time, and on its legs are little baskets, basically, and they will collect that pollen and they will harvest that and they'll put it in their little baskets and they'll bring it back to the hive and deposit it into those little hexagonal shapes that we see in the honeycomb. Each one will have a different color, and that's how you can tell what type of honey you're getting, because it will represent the certain plant families that are being harvested by those bees at the time. We actually call them nectar flows.
Okay.
So like maple trees, we get honey from those. The bees actually pollinate your maple trees.
Okay.
Dandelions, simple things,
Now,
all the way to complex.
And I guess that was my question, is when you say pollinate, and I think I'm remembering now from when I was a kid, just the fact of these bees buzzing around, going from plant to plant, flower to flower, they mix the sexes and allow the plants to then
correct
fruit
They basically are the liaison between the female and the male plant. They're the person or the little organism that transfers the sex mixing that creates the seed life that actually gives life to that plant. So when they're dropping from flower to flower, collecting pollen at the same time, they are depositing and they're pollinating at the same time.
Okay.
And that's how we get pollination. And the honey is just their food, and we have learned to consume it ourselves. So that's how they winter. So they just save honey for the winter time.
Okay, now, and I'm sorry to interrupt. How about those African killer bees? Swarms of killer bees are coming for us. In the 90s, in the 80s, I was under my desk worried about nuclear war. In the 90s, we were tripped out looking for killer bees in the sky.
Yes,
Wait, maybe that was a different thing that I was on.
I don't know, but I do know that we lived in Arizona at the time, and Africanized honeybees were a concern, and there were professional bee removers that were coming and removing swarms, because they did swarm and kill occasional dogs, and humans were killed at times. The Africanized honeybee, one good thing about that is, since its arrival to the United States, has kind of bred out, just kind of like backbreeding and crossbreeding and interbreeding. When the drone is the male bee that actually mates with the queen, and when those drones kind of leave the hive, they get kicked out of the hive or killed at close to wintertime, we always say they go to some drone convention. But when they go back, a lot of times they'll go back to any hive. They don't really go back to the same hive. So what has happened is you've got a regular Carnolian or Italian bee that may have connected with an Africanized queen, and so that's being bred out. And so they're actually becoming better, calmer, and I'll be honest, the honey produced by an Africanized honeybee is quite hardy. They're actually quite the producer of honey.
Okay.
Yep. So it's a positive now. We don't want to look at them negatively anymore. I think we just need, bees talk to you. They will tell you when you're in their space. They'll bump you. They'll actually bump your head, and they'll warn you, and just step away.
Yeah.
It's simple. And they won't hurt you.
I always told my young children, just ignore them.
Yeah. They're wonderful. So, but that's the one thing. And also, I don't think that people are aware of how just a little bit of passion and love for the honeybee can give us a direction to try to do more to save them. This
Yeah.
is my whole objective here. We need to save these guys, other pollinators too. And that's where on the website we'll load some how-tos and the DIYs, because it's really critical that we work together, but we have to work together.
Oh, that's right. Wait. Let me do my job. The website. That's right. You can go to honeybeemyteacher.com. That's Patty's website that backs this podcast. Honeybee. That's HBEE. So honeybee myteacher.com.
Yes. So, and my family and I've really fallen in love with the honeybees. And I think people get confused how you can fall in love with a honeybee, because they assume they're just a bug.
Yes.
And they're not, but they don't. They're very mysterious. They're complex. They're very captivating to watch that superorganism when they move in concert together. It's pretty amazing. And they really can't be conquered. They can be exterminated. But if they're working together, you can't do anything to them. They can make anything happen. They're very democratic. So I am kind of watching the honeybee and learning life applications in addition to how they're feeding my belly, but they're feeding my soul at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a direction, and I go with it because they do give me solace. I'm fascinated by that. They've kind of changed me. I'm grateful to them, and I want to advocate for them for that. But I also think I have to understand my why.
Yeah.
And my why wasn't just to have honey to sell. I mean, that's a byproduct.
Why be a bee steward?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And I, when I sat down, I wintered my bees. I had to get them ready for winter. Wrapped them up and everything, and I'm sitting in my backyard, and I was sad because I couldn't see them being active anymore and doing those things, because I knew, and I know now, that when spring comes, I get to watch all that activity, and I get to watch flowers bloom, beauty, the fragrances of fruit trees, and I'm going to have a harvest for my family, for my animals. And I just see the chain of life
Yes.
that stems from such a tiny little thing. And it just goes from there, and it just gets bigger and bigger. And, I've got these beautiful pear trees on my property that are probably 100 years old, and they don't really make big pears anymore.
Yeah.
But boy, do they make darn good honey, things like that. So, and I sat and I looked at how I learned from them from a human perspective. I think they give me humanity, because it's so comfortable to buy bug spray and just kind of go out and spray your yard and have that beautiful manicured lawn. And I think I just soon see the bees thrive
Yeah.
and enjoy the dandelions and utilize what benefits I can get from that plant, because it has a multitude of helps for us as well. I mean, I think we limit ourselves. We're really pigeonholed into agriculture's description of what food and flora should look like to us now.
Yeah.
And I think we need to think for ourselves.
Not just that, pop culture. I'm a middle-aged man. I'm supposed to have a well-manicured green lawn.
Right.
I've actually had friends come over and laugh at me because you and I are kindred spirits in that way. I just let it grow.
Sure.
I'm not going to put poison into the earth so that what I can have an even, pretty lawn.
Exactly.
It's just as pretty just with what our Washington State ground creates.
Right.
And so it's that pop culture that's against us as well.
It is. And it is. It's the image out to beat the Joneses. And I really don't care about the Joneses. They can go find another place to be, because that's not my space. I think we should just be you, I be me, and we together can still be our individual selves. But it's just kind of like if you take a piece of tie-dye, the colors are just wild when you throw them on there. But when you tie it off and work it together and put a system in place, what do you get? It's
get
amazing.
A new creation.
And it's brilliant. And everybody loves it. And, it seems like anybody from all walks of life can love it. So we got to stop limiting ourselves. We need to grow. And I think we need to mature too, and just mature in respect to, we get on these tangents to where we love doing certain things and we're really trying to help our ecosystems and our environment. But sometimes we get so big on one thing, we disregard the other, and other things get hurt. I think we need to be a little better educated, and it's not really our fault, because we're only subject to so much information. And that feedback on the website was probably the best prime example how you can think you have all of your right facts and there's still bad information out there no matter how hard you try.
Yeah.
So we just want to work collectively to do what's best for the bees and the pollinators. And in addition to that, work that out and broaden that out to help each other, help ourselves, help the world too. And I just think the honeybee is what can keep us all together because so many people are learning to love that little thing.
Yes.
Yeah, they're cute. I think they're precious. So, but that was just one of my whys. And you know, there's beauty in the bee. They have a rhythm and they get on the outside of their hive and they'll cluster and they'll fan their wings in a certain pattern and it's like they have a dance and they have a song. You can actually understand how they're communicating with you. Their sounds are distinct. So there's a lot of reasons why we got to, you know, I want to help. And it's for me. And that's probably my selfish reason. But I just feel like that if I can find a state of peace that way and want to make a change in the world that's impactful, that even if it's one or two people at a time or a beehive at a time, and we can all start doing that here and there, do we really need the bigger places and the bigger organizations to do it for us? We can control our health. And I just think that the honeybee is one of the many avenues we can do that.
Yeah, there was a wonderful picture that you put on Twitter recently. What's your Twitter handle?
My Twitter handle is also honeybee, my teacher.
Honeybee, my teacher. Imagine that. Honeybee, B-E-E,
Yes.
my teacher. So
Yes.
at honeybee, my teacher. Wonderful picture of people growing their own food and stewarding bees that used to pollinate the food that they eat. I really, that picture connected with me, and I enjoyed it very much. All right, well, let's come back. So that was one of the whys. There's the why, you, and us.
Yes.
There's,
Well, why you? So on that Twitter post, I also posted the picture of the drone, that little drone bee. That's an actual drone that now exists, and that has been engineered to be used to pollinate food artificially should the honeybee populations dwindle so much that we don't have proper pollination anymore. What is going to happen to the price of food and everything else that involves pollinating, textiles, all of those things that we've already talked about before? What is going to happen to our bottom line as consumers if this becomes the only way we can pollinate?
not just the bottom line, but the control system as well. Just looking at big agriculture and corn specifically, how they have to spray. They have to spray to increase their yields. But yet our federal government, you and I, pays a subsidy to corn growers per acre.
Right.
So are we subsidizing the company that makes the spray? Are we subsidizing the cattle feed that's being grown? I'm unclear as to why there are these subsidies when there's all these commercial mechanisms in place. And I did read that in your Twitter post that, wow, we don't want to come to rely on a commercial mechanism.
Right.
Just another commercial mechanism to throw into the chain where, maybe there'll be a bee subsidy someday and we'll actually be paying for some corporation to make these drone bees to help pollinate our plants. Whereas if we just took care of them from the beginning and we were stewards instead of harvesters, if you will, I thought that was an important point.
Yeah, I feel that's a critical point too. And I think this is where stewardship, and I think people want to learn and come together on understanding what a steward does. A steward is not a slave. A steward is not a servant. A steward is a committed individual, committed to making something better for themselves and for others. And we do everything we can. And maybe it seems extreme, but I'm going to give all I have every minute I can to helping that happen and to help those bees. That is, I feel obligated to them. And it's when I lost my bees to a bear attack this year, I was really upset. I was sad because I was attached to my bees and they're like pets. And so, yeah, everything has value. And I think, and you have value. I have value. Humans have value. And I've teased a lot about being an eternal optimist and super hopeful, but I'm going to stay that way because I really love people. And I just feel like, I just think hate's really, toxic right now, and it's spreading on all categories. And we are so busy thriving in chaos that we're forgetting to be stewards of our own health and stewards of anything that contributes to our health. And this is one of the mechanisms we have to pay attention to.
Yeah. Honey Be My Teacher is brought to you by Smokin' Jays and SmokinJays.com. Everything for your smokin' lifestyle. Just for you, there is a coupon code to save 15% off at SmokinJays.com. It's honey. So enter honey at checkout at SmokinJays.com and receive 15% off your order. And all orders over $100 ship for free at SmokinJays.com. All right, back to the show. Okay, Patty.
Yeah.
That was very personal to you, and we had a great discussion about the why you're into beekeeping and the lessons that you learn from these creatures. Help me understand why the general public, someone like myself that's peripherally interested in beekeeping and being a steward of bees, why should I care?
Well, you should care because this is going to be viable to your own survival. So, I mean, can you imagine just, you talked about how you look out in your yard and you like to let things grow au natural, but that will go away. So what is the cost to you if you neglect to see the need to save an organism that is now threatened because of our industry's standards and practices? So this can decimate all of your food sources. I'm not the only one who will suffer here. You would too. So the cost to you can be tremendous. And imagine your children and your children's children. If you look farther down the road, what do you want for your family and how can you fix that? And you can do that with the bees. I mean, we had discussed before how you and your family had chickens. We talked about in the previous intro, and I have chickens too. But we had also discussed they're not going to save the world right now.
No.
That's a very true story. But the bees, everybody needs the bees. Everybody needs the pollinators. There are lots of other pollinators out there. So this is where you and everybody else out there and I together, let's just get together and put our minds together and some actions and take some action steps to do something to help the bees. If we become our own little entity, wonderful. God bless every single one of you. Let's get together. Amen. Hallelujah. I am ready because, I'm getting ready. It's going to be in the show notes with my email. Anybody can talk to me about this, but I'm ready to get started. Let's teach you how to have a beehive in your own backyard. Let's find out where you can connect with an association to see how it can be relevant to you and it can help your community because this is your community and I'm in my community. So this is where you can better your space in life and make it good for your family too. And I would think anybody would want a better place for their family and their children and their children.
Yeah. Sometimes you would wonder, but yes, I think that's a fair assumption.
Yes. And, and also too I guess maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist, but do you really want government controlling how you eat your food and what you're allowed to have anymore because they're going to determine what gets pollinated and when?
No, and that's where we were going with the drones, the mechanical drones that could replace our bees. Is that control. And everybody's worried about GMO. Everybody's worried about organic. Well, at the very start of the process, do you want a mechanism, a metal mechanism, some sort of robot pollinating?
Right.
The very beginning of your food process, I don't see that as a healthy thing.
No.
And I think a lot of people sometimes they do. They sit back and they say, technology is going to solve all the problems. And they might look at bees and say, well, we don't need bees anymore. We're going to have these little nano metal bees, these little drones going around. But it seems like a precarious position to rely on something like that versus our own natural source of honeybees that we can steward, take care of, and help thrive.
Not to mention that you're giving away your own autonomy to thrive in life yourself. Yes. You're giving it away. And we're, as Americans or just people in general, anywhere in the world, because I know we have people listening from all over the globe, when you look in the mirror, do you really want somebody telling you how you're going to conduct that person's life all the time? Do you want them controlling every minute and every morsel you get to ingest? I don't.
No.
I'm going to buck that system all day long. It's just in my blood. So I want us to take control and take back our environment. And instead of getting off on these big tangents where people are sending $20 a month to an organization, keep the money in your pocket and let's show you how to make a beehive or buy one. They're inexpensive. They take some learning, but you can do it. Kids are doing this. This is a blast. And you can have your own little bee colony, and you're not only having wonderful side benefits of honey and propolis and wax if you like to do
All right,
crafts.
you've said this twice now. Layman guy has to stick up his hand. What is propolis?
Propolis is the sticky stuff that bees use to glue the hive together to make it waterproof. And it's like this really gooey red substance, but it is medicinal. You can make cough drops out of it.
Okay.
So, and that's some of the recipes. That's one of the directions we're going to go. On the website, you're going to be able to understand what you can do with beeswax and what you can do with propolis, which is the red, sticky, gooey substance. And it is thick and tough. It is hard to pull apart. And then your honey. Pollen, you can use pollen traps. You don't have to take all the pollen, but you can keep some if you have allergies. You can treat yourself. You don't have to go get allergy shots all the time. You don't have to rely on chemicals, government, and the big brother out there to tell you how to be healthy anymore.
That's funny. Many decades ago, Big Brother would have been the government, and the word you were missing was corporation.
True.
And yet you came up with Big Brother for corporation. It's funny how our lives change in this,
it was Big Brother
in this
then.
economic system that we've built.
Yes, yeah. And I don't want corporations and I don't want politicians dictating how I'm going to live my life. I'm a free spirit and I'm a free will, and I want to execute that free will. But I think everybody, if you really innately look in the mirror, none of us wants a ring in our nose and to be led around like a cow.
Yeah.
I just don't think we do. I think maybe we get really, really lazy. It's hard, or we just get tired. We're busy. But this doesn't have to take a lot of time. In the moments that it's needed, it might be a little time consuming, but it's not that often. So you can create a thriving environment for your bees. You can thrive as a family. Everybody can benefit, and you're also contributing to your neighbors doing well. You're actually contributing to a 3-mile radius every time you have a beehive.
Yeah.
So that impact is bigger than you know. If you put that many circles overlapping each other and overlapping all over, how much can you cover?
Yeah.
There's a lot more of a widespread benefit if we just approach it that way. But that's what I see in the future for everybody out there. And that's what I want to get to. Let's join together. Let's talk. Mm-hmm. Let's ask questions. Let's get answers. Let's find those solutions together. Let's build. Let's become a team. And let's join each other and just lock hands and make that strong, that trust fall thing where everybody gets together and you learn to fall on them. I want to be able to trust in my fellow man to keep things just as safe as I want to keep it for them.
Yeah, in my previous community, it was really big on community gardens. And there was a wonderful program that got my kids involved, and my life partner and I got involved. And it didn't have anything to do with bees. And I almost can see beekeeping becoming a part of those community gardens.
Absolutely.
And have you contacted any community gardens or anything like that?
I am not familiar with the community gardens in the local area in Rochester. I know that a couple of the co-op locations are more like marijuana growing. Yeah. So they don't utilize the same systems that the bees do. So I'm actively looking. If anybody knows, please go to the website, look it up in the show notes, email me. I'm available all the time. I would love to know. I do have a list of associations, beekeeping associations that I'm putting together that will be in the website to where, like a listing, so that you can use it as a guide and a source in order to at least locally speak to somebody who can at least assist you or give you some direction to where you could find one in your area. They will also walk you through the process, and you can hands-on learn how to work with bees before you do the bees yourself.
Yeah.
And not everybody can have bees, because there are people that are honestly allergic to bees. But if you can't have bees, plant the flowers, plant the plants, learn how to cultivate and at least be a good steward of your land.
Yes.
You can have a control and a contribution. No one has to be left out. We can all do this together when it comes to the bee and any other pollinator out there too.
Okay. What did we learn today? We learned why Patty is so passionate about her bees. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We learned why the world should be passionate about bees. What else did we learn, Patty? We learned your Twitter handle.
Yes.
At Honey Be My Teacher.
Yes.
I know you're active on Facebook. You're active on Instagram. You've got an email address. All of those will be listed in the show notes.
Yes.
What a wonderful adventure you have embarked upon. Episode number 1 is in the books. The why.
Yes.
The why you, why me. And I can't wait to see what you've got for the next episode. And I believe you said something about a white paper. Do you want to give people a little sneak preview of the DIY section, the special podcast segments you've got coming up?
Yeah, there's a couple. In the DIY section, I'm going to be putting together a white paper that you're going to be able, I can email to you. I want you to be able to have a printed format on the list of things you would need to get started with beekeeping, just the basics. It's like a beekeeping 101 page. It's a very simple structure, and it will list some basic local resources as well as some reputable online resources. I only want to use companies I'm familiar with that I have found to be very good for me. I want to warn people against buying beehives that they have to assemble themselves. It's almost better to just get one that's already made.
Okay.
Mine, I got one. I get my hives from Beeline.
Uh-huh.
It's in Rochester. There's another one somewhere out in towards, I think, Morton. But Beeline's great. What I like about Beeline is they hand tool everything. Mm-hmm. And they're held together with more than glue. They're truly machined, and it's a very well made product. The ones I ordered through Amazon, I love Amazon for everything else, but I had to glue that thing together. And I'm going to be honest, my skills aren't the best. I'll show pictures of the day I was doing that and the frustration. It was a hot, long day, and that beehive did not hold up so well in this last windstorm. So I would like to keep it together. That way you'll have all of that information.
Straight from China through Amazon to your door. I think if we're going to keep with the community aspect of things, we should find our local sources.
Absolutely.
All right. So white paper, I'm looking forward to it so much. You've got spiritual aspects. You've got the DIY, the do-it-yourself. She's going to talk you through step by step. I love that podcast series that's coming up. I love also the fact that you're going to have a white paper and something downloadable, some aids to go with the podcast to help people out. Just looking forward to this adventure, Patty.
Awesome. And I am too. And it's a journey. I don't want to do this by myself. I'm here. I want you to come with me. I just want to have everybody hang in there with me, and let's just rock it. We're going to make it happen. And even if it's one beehive at a time, let's do. Let's just buzz, buzz, buzz. I am so grateful to have shared my love of the honeybee with you. I have so much more to share as we all grow in knowledge to save the honeybee, which will ultimately save us. This podcast is brought to you by Smoke and Jays and smokeandjays.com. Use coupon code HONEY for 15% off your next order, and all orders over $100 ship for free. I'd like to thank my producer, Jay Fratt, for bringing my love for honeybees to the podcast format. He has his own podcast called The Conservative Hippie, which is available on all podcast platforms. Just go to theconservativehippie.com. Visit me at honeybeemyteacher.com to connect with me and enjoy all the buzz about our amazing little friends. Let's be social. All of my social media links are available in the show notes. Please email me anytime at bemyhoney.honeybees@gmail.com. So until we meet again, be mindful, be thankful, and most of all, be kind.